Hey everyone, I'm Matt Friedman, Matt at the Oracle. You are listening to the September 18th, 2015 edition of the College Daily Slant, powered by Pro Football Focus and brought to you by DraftKings.com. This is the PFF radio show dedicated to college football and daily fantasy sports, and we have a great show coming up. With me is Wes Huber, a college football DFS savant and a PFF fantasy college football lead writer. You can follow him on Twitter at PFF_Wes. Wes, how's it going?
I'm doing all right. I've been analyzing college games for the past 48 hours. Running on a couple hours of sleep, but I'm playing through it. I'm going to get this information to you, and I'm excited for week 3. We got a lot of those FCS matchups behind us, and I'm looking forward to some real football.
Definitely. The real question is, how many Red Bulls are you running on?
Honestly, I don't even know.
There's just a pile of Red Bull cans kind of under your feet. When you move around under your desk, you can hear all this rattling of Red Bull cans. But it is great that you are powering through and bringing us yet another edition of the College Daily Slant. We are entering week 3 of the college football season. For some teams, this is the last week of action before they face their conference schedule and compete directly against the teams with which they will be vying not only for a conference championship, but also a spot in the college football playoffs. Everything is about to take off starting this week. If you want to be sure that you stay on top of the action, you should think about subscribing to Pro Football Focus. We have tons of great college football content, and with the PFF Fantasy Gold package, you can subscribe for only $29.99. For this week's show, we're going to do basically what we always do. We're going to start out by looking at some notable storylines for Saturday's games. Wes is going to highlight some of the important Las Vegas lines, and then we're going to give you our Week 3 DraftKings and FanDuel plays of the week. And Wes is even going to throw your way a couple of plays for Fantasy Feud. Stick around till the end. Wes, let's get into it. Give us the rundown of the top storylines, happenings, events, injuries, suspensions, new starters, all of that. What are the news items that you think fantasy players need to be aware of for Week 3? And let's start with the quarterback position.
All right. Well, on the injury front, let's go to Oregon. Vernon Adams Jr. revealed that he played last week at Michigan State with a broken finger. He's doing everything he can to play in this game. The opponent, Georgia State, obviously doesn't present the challenge that Michigan State does. We could see a lot of Jeff Locke. Another guy that it's a smaller school but has a lot of talent is Reginald Bell Jr. He has a broken jaw. He tried to come back a little too early. He may be out for several weeks. UNLV quarterback Blake Decker, he's looking highly questionable to play against Michigan. Kirk Ballendeck will start. That's the likely scenario. Basically, avoid UNLV against Michigan. It's not going to be pretty. Then we go down to the new starter front. Of course, Will Grier is he started last week against East Carolina and did a great job. It was a tough matchup. There's been a lot of publicity about that, but he will be making his second consecutive start against Kentucky, and as long as he plays well, I really think he may stay in the game from beginning to end. We might see a little Treon Harris, but not very much. Pat Narduzzi in Pittsburgh, he's not going to publicly announce the starter between Chad Voidick and Nathan Peterman. It's unfortunate that Voitic hasn't stepped up and played better in his sophomore season, but whoever can get the ball to Tyler Boyd, it really doesn't matter. And then, of course, we have the situations in Ohio State and Alabama. I've nothing to report on the Alabama front. It's a pretty much don't touch DFS situation. As far as Ohio State, if you're going to bank on one of their quarterbacks, I'd go Cardale Jones and stay away from JT Barrett. Of course, he's got talent for days, but he doesn't have the inside track to the starting job right now as Cardale Jones does. But it's really frustrating to see the two quarterbacks flip flop the way they have been.
All right, and what about the running back position? Any items there?
Yeah, as far as injuries, looks like Samaje Perine for Oklahoma. He had a preseason knee injury. It was minor, but it limited him in the first week. Last week, he put up a really good day, had 23 carries for 78 yards, and also a receiving touchdown. And we could be looking at a breakout game for him, his first breakout of 2015 against Tulsa. California's Daniel Lasco. He strained a muscle in his hip. He's looking like he'll play against Texas. It doesn't really inspire much confidence to have a lame hipped running back. Corey Clement, really disappointing news there. He could possibly sit out until their first conference game against Iowa, and that's unfortunate considering a lot of people took him in the first round of redrafts. He's struggling through a groin injury. Then we have LaShawn Daniels for Iowa. He injured his ankle last week against Iowa State. He's questionable against Pittsburgh. Of course, Aaron Jones, which guy with a lot of talent for UTEP. He'll be out for the year. He severely injured his ankle against Texas Tech, and the backup running backs for that team aren't really they're nothing exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing what Javon Robinson can do on Auburn or with Auburn. Of course, they're playing LSU this week, so it'll be a tough test. But of course, we have Peyton Barber has already been named the starter there, but it's going to be nice to see Jovan get some playing time. He had been out with an undisclosed injury from what I could find. And then finally, on the starter front, Rodney Smith. He's no longer listed as a co-starter with Roderick Williams in Minnesota. That's official. Rodney Smith is the bell cow. He's a really solid-looking running back, somebody that can provide Golden Gophers with a replacement for David Cobb.
All right, and then let's move to the wide receiver position. Any news items there?
Sure. Well, if you played him, you got burned last week. Rashard Higgins for Colorado State. He was the last second inactive. There was really no information provided. It's the risk that you run into playing college, but it also makes it even more thrilling. When you actually do pull out some success. He's iffy to play this week against Colorado. He's been running some individual pass routes in practice, but man, that just doesn't really fill me with confidence at his salary. A couple of guys that from the games that I analyzed, these injuries aren't reported. These are just guys that were coming on and off going off the field throughout their last games. Braxton Miller at Ohio State, he last week against Hawaii, which wasn't a great matchup for anybody other than the Ohio State defense and Ezekiel Elliott. He was on and off the field in the second half. I really couldn't get an idea of an ankle. Something was going on with him. They're not revealing information. He'll play. I'm not worried about that, but I'm not really confident in using him significantly this week in DFS. And then DJ Foster in Arizona State. They're playing New Mexico, which is a great matchup for running backs. Of course, he's moved over to wide receiver, but the injuries at the backup positions, Kellen Balaj, and then a few of the smaller name guys, they're really thin at running back, so they've been using DJ Foster. Well, last week against an FCS school, he was on and off the field as well. Jared Dangerfield, this may be the first week that we might get 100% from him. They're going up against Indiana, so he might provide Western Kentucky with some decent production. Tommy Lee Lewis is going to be looking like he's going to play against Ohio State this week. Not sure it'll really matter. And then TCU's Deontay Gray, he's at least from what I've read, hasn't made any progress recovering from his knee injury, and it's really unfortunate because TCU would be a a dynamic passing offense with Josh Doxson. And yeah, I can't remember their backup. I'm sure you know.
Listenby.
Yes, Kobe Listenby. And then on the suspension front, a lot of people's big-time sleeper, preseason sleeper, Desmond Epps, he was suspended last week for his own reasons that we won't go into, of course, and didn't play against USC in the embarrassing blowout. But he did post 15 catches for 160 yards against Ohio in week 1, which was really impressive. He will play this week, actually, against Wofford. So I'm looking forward to using him again. And really unfortunate news, Leonte Carew possibly done at Rutgers. He's suspended indefinitely for some allegations. He won't play until he's completely cleared, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's dismissed from the school. It's not looking good considering the atmosphere that we're surrounded by within allegations that he's confronting.
All right, and then finally, if we have to talk about tight ends, and we probably have to, let's talk about tight ends. Any news items there?
Yeah, I got one, and I'll talk about it more later. He was one of my big preseason guys, Sethan Carter at Nebraska. He's been reinstated. He will play against Miami Saturday, and actually, Mike Riley has been talking him up. So I'm glad to see that after he was surprisingly had his suspension prolonged an extra week. But yeah, Mike Riley's looking forward to getting him on the field.
And then also, this is kind of secondary, but one guy who maybe is of more interest now is Hunter Henry at Arkansas, now that Keon Hatcher has been injured. So he was already really the second receiver on that team, and now basically he might be the number one guy on that team, just depending on what happens with the other wide receivers. But enough about tight ends. Let's move on. Let's talk about some of the Vegas lines. For a lot of fantasy players, the over-under and the spread are key pieces of information in making lineup decisions. Let's talk about some of the attractive Vegas lines, some of the ones that have intriguing point opportunities for players. Let's start with Illinois and North Carolina in that matchup. What are your thoughts there?
All right. Well, let me just retort what you said about the Arkansas receivers. Keep an eye on Drew Morgan as well. In Illinois, Illinois is going to Chapel Hill. It's a 63.5 over/under. It's remained constant over the last 5 days. This is going to be a shootout with two spread offenses that look to move the ball down the field. Illinois played against Kent State in Western Illinois, so we really can't get a true understanding of how they're going to play this year. But they currently have the 18th ranked rushing defense. Sorry, my cats are getting into a claw fight over there. They only gave up 78.5 rushing yards per game so far this season, and they have the 91st ranked rushing offense, and that's understandable considering the opponents. Putting your backups in, it's not going to generate your it's not going to generate your best offense. They've converted 12 of 31 third downs, which is, it's hard to really get a feel. 38th best passing offense, which I think we'll see that go up. And surprisingly, they've only given up 2.90 yards per play. The number 4 total defense, which completely, I think, is related to their opponents. North Carolina, they played South Carolina in a loss, and of course they destroyed North Carolina A&T, and their starters got limited play in that game. They're the 99th ranked rushing defense, 56th rushing offense. They give up and they produce around 200 yards a game, basically. They've converted half of their third downs. They keep the chains moving. Of course, that's purely behind Marquise Williams out of the shotgun. He's got a quartet of wide receivers that he really hasn't utilized that much, hasn't really needed to outside of the South Carolina game. They've got the 60th best passing offense, but it's a little skewed because of the rushing yardage that Marquise puts up, and not surprisingly, the 53rd total defense. They give up nearly 5 yards per play, which is not surprising. What is surprising though is North Carolina is averaging around 12.3 yards per completion, which is a decent amount considering Williams's struggles in the vertical game last year.
All right, and then what about Memphis and Bowling Green State? That is a really high over/under, a lot of points in that game. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, going old school there with Bowling Green State. Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a complete stratosphere type scoring game. Now, that said, Memphis's defense is pretty good. Not to take anything away from them, but they will be going up against possibly the worst defense, or second or third worst defense in the country. That is, it usually lowers the defense of their opponent. I don't see the Memphis defense playing up to their normal standards in this game. I think it'll be more of let's score as many points as we can. Of course, I mean they'll play defense, but I just don't see him, at 100%. It's a 79.5 over/under, which is, I believe it's the largest of Saturday or of this weekend, and it's actually skyrocketed 8.5 points over the last 5 days. Memphis has played Missouri State and Kansas, so again, it's hard to really get a feel for how well Kansas is. Pretty bad. So even though we got a Power 5 school, it's hard to give them a lot of credit for that win. And their numbers defensive wise are pretty good and unsurprisingly good. They had the 34th best passing offense and the 10th best rushing offense. So Memphis can score some points, put up some yardage. I was really surprised to see that Memphis was number 10, and I'll probably look into the DFS possibilities there. Bowling Green, I mean, what can you say? Now, it is a little disappointing that their running game, they have the 79th ranked rushing offense in college football right now. I'm a little surprised. It's actually looking like Tim Coppett may pull ahead there in the backfield, but you can't deny the passing offense, the number 1 ranked passing offense in the country, 462 yards, and they're averaging 14.2 yards per completion. It's ridiculous. Now, you couple that with the 108th ranked total defense, and you can get a sense of why we have a 79.5 over/under.
Definitely, and I should say, just as your cats over there are fighting, I have 2 dogs back here snoring. So if you're picking up any background noise, that's what's going on. Let's talk about Texas Tech and Arkansas, another interesting over/under there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's 70.5 over/under. It's jumped 5.5 points over the last week. I've actually done a lot of work with Texas Tech so far this year. They look great against Sam Houston State and UTEP, of course, vanilla opponents, but nonetheless, their offense has looked tremendous. I'm really excited to see what they can do against a Power 5 team. Arkansas is not the Arkansas that we saw last year. Their offense is down to the bare minimum, whereas last year they were able to protect players and distribute the touches to avoid injury. They don't have that luxury this season. They've already lost Jonathan Williams. Now they lost Keon Hatcher. It's looking really bad. They lost to Toledo last week, and that was a Toledo team without their top player. So I mean, I think that Texas Tech is going to provide Arkansas with everything, with a lot more than they're expecting. Patrick Mahomes III, as we were talking about earlier, I mean, his ceiling is so high with his ability to generate rushing yards. Texas Tech, they've got the one of the worst defenses in the country, although they did bring over the defensive coordinator from Houston, who I thought would help to revitalize that side of the ball, and that it still may happen. Of course, we're talking about two teams that they beat pretty comfortably. Texas Tech has the 58th ranked rushing offense. I want to add that Justin Stockton for Texas Tech, man, that guy is lightning fast. If he gets a crease, just watch out. He's definitely somebody that if not this year, next year is somebody to keep in mind. And Texas Tech impressively has converted 14 to 27 third downs. Their offense is just basically unstoppable on paper right now. Whereas Arkansas, on the other hand, has been pretty decent on defense. They've actually been really good, but they played UTEP and Toledo, which I didn't do any direct comparisons with the fact that both of them played UTEP, but it is definitely something I will be doing before the games start. Arkansas has got the 13th best rushing defense and the number 23 total defense. But they are giving up 4.5 yards per play, which really says a lot about those early numbers. It's a little misleading, and they've only converted 10 of 24 third downs, which, although not too far off of the 14 out of 27 for Texas Tech, in the long run, that's actually a huge statistical difference. Arkansas, the most surprising statistic that I looked at today, and I know you touted Brandon Allen the past 2 weeks, and I was like, not all that confident, but man, 441 passing yards per game and 15.5 yards per completion. I see that going way, way down this week. Even against Texas Tech, I don't think Brandon Allen's going to be able to do it. So this is going to be a close one, and I actually, in my selection picks, I took Texas Tech this week.
All right, now let's talk about the matchups based on Vegas lines that people should maybe be a little bit cautious about. And let's go to Auburn and LSU. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, great matchup in Death Valley. You got to love these SEC matchups. It really gets me excited for the heart of the college football season to get here. We're looking at a 47 over-under that actually dropped almost 5 points in 5 days. Auburn has played Louisville and Jackson State. Now, here's the thing. Auburn has really struggled with their passing offense. They have the 93rd passing offense in the country. They're only averaging 186.5 passing yards. They have produced almost 12 yards per completion. That is unfortunately not gone through the hands of Duke Williams, who, by the way, I forgot to mention, and the Duke Williams watch will be active in this game. Their rushing defense has actually been the 120th in the country, which really surprising. Gus Malzahn, I would not expect that from him, giving up 272 rushing yards a game. They have converted 11 of 22 third downs, which is, they're going to need to keep doing that. But the simple fact remains they're just not scoring points, and they've given up almost 5 yards per play. LSU, on the other hand, of course, they had their first game canceled due to weather, but last week against Mississippi State, man, I was really impressed by LSU's all-around performance. The Brandon Harris was not didn't put the performance out that I thought that he could have. But we can also chalk that up to the opponent. Mississippi State may have a better pass defense this year. I did not analyze that game. LSU they're as strong as ever. They only gave up 43 rushing yards to Mississippi State, and Dak Prescott. I mean, it was an impressive performance. And Leonard Fournette had a great game. They put up 266 rushing yards on him. And like I said, Brandon Harris just needs to play better. He did have a 91-yard touchdown reception or pass to Travin Doral, overturned due to penalty. and he only averaged 8 yards per completion. So I'm really excited about that matchup. And let me just say that as far as these limited exposure matchups, just basically what I'm highlighting is the games that I won't be choosing 3 players for an individual lineup from. Not that I won't play individuals from these games.
All right, well, let's talk about Rutgers and Penn State. You had mentioned earlier Leonte Carew. What do you think is going to happen in that matchup?
Yeah, this has got to be one of the most. I love the Big Ten. I grew up I went to elementary school near a Big Ten school, and this is just not a very sexy matchup. I'd really like to see Christian Hackenberg play better, but that hasn't happened. He's averaging negative points per game in DFS, and Rutgers just lost their most exciting player. Now they do have a nice group of running backs. Basically the numbers say it all. 45.5 over under. It's increased by 0.5 points over the last 5 days. So if that gets you excited, Rutgers has played Norfolk State and Washington State. They do have the number 4 ranked rushing defense, but of course they played Norfolk State and Washington State, which they throw the ball 70 times a game. And then they do have the number 26 ranked rushing offense, like I said. I'm not 100% sure on the availability of their starting running back this week, but Rutgers has a stable of backs. Paul James may or may not play, but they have a stable of backs that can produce. And if you're going to play anybody in this matchup, it would be one of those running backs. Avoid trying to select a wide receiver from Rutgers. They're not going to produce what Leonte Carew produced. Leonte Carew was a top 10 or 20 wide receiver in the nation. They don't have that type of talent on the roster, so avoid that. Their defense is not as good as Penn State's. They give up almost 6 yards per play, but the problem lies with the Penn State offense against Temple and Buffalo, which I will say Temple is a lot better than people gave them credit for coming into this season. But even against Buffalo, they didn't produce. Their defense is ridiculously strong. They give up just over 4 yards per play. But I do like Akeel Lynch in this matchup, running back. But here's the last thing I'll need to tell you about Penn State. They've only converted 8 of 28 third downs, which just is ridiculous for the playing Temple and Buffalo. Well, Temple, like I said, is good, but in Buffalo, it's just not going to get it done.
All right, and then finally, on the topic of not getting it done, let's talk about Pittsburgh and Iowa.
Yeah, like I mentioned, Pat Narduzzi's not going to name his starting quarterback, so avoid there. Of course, you want some Tyler Boyd wherever you can fit him into your salaries, but 47 over under, and it's actually gone down almost 5 points in 5 days. Pittsburgh has played Youngstown State and Akron. And Akron's decent, not going to knock them, but Youngstown State just doesn't provide anything other than, juicing up the ranks for them. They're another team that they've completed 12 of 29 third downs, which really is something that concerns me with James Conner out for the season. Now, Kadri Olesen is their new starter, and honestly, I'm all about throwing him into some lineups. This one might be a tough matchup, but of course that can always turn into DFS gold. Iowa is the number 8 rushing defense in the country right now, but they played Illinois State and Iowa State, but they have only given up 49 yards on the ground per game. The rushing offense wise, they're both right around 230 yards a game. But like I said, Pittsburgh's number 21 in rushing defense, and Iowa's number 8, which is also a takeaway from this analysis, is that Pittsburgh has instantly kind converted it to the Pat Narduzzi production from Michigan State. Now I'd like to see him do it in this game, and of course against other Power 5 opponents. But Pittsburgh's defense, if they can get a quarterback to play with Tyler Boyd, even without James Conner, if they can get the defense to produce, we could see a very similar team to what he had in Michigan State. And these teams are Pittsburgh's number 19 in total defense, and Iowa's number 25. I really see a great matchup of very evenly skilled teams, but I lean a little towards Pittsburgh with their defense. So, but I like C.J. Beathard. I like Matt Vandenberg on Iowa, but we'll see. And like I said, LaShawn Daniels is out for this, looking like he's out for this week. So that may be something to consider because Jordan Canzeri doesn't really have the body to withstand 20 carries per game. So if he gets hurt, they may be in some trouble.
All right, Wes, fantastic information. All that's going to be very useful when people are setting their college football lineups this weekend. And of course, the NFL regular season is underway. Week 1 was awesome. I mean, football is back, and it already feels like the playoffs thanks to 1 week fantasy football at DraftKings.com. With millions of dollars being won each week, every play in every game could take you closer to a life-changing payday. This isn't fantasy as usual. This is DraftKings. Welcome to the big time. Hurry to DraftKings.com now and use promo code PFF to play for free with your first deposit in this Sunday's $1 million fantasy football contest. First place takes home $100,000. Enter PFF for a free entry now at DraftKings.com. That is DraftKings.com. Wes, speaking of the big time, let's get to our Week 3 plays for DraftKings and FanDuel. Let's go to the quarterback position. Who are your 2 plays of the week?
All right, yeah, it's exciting stuff. I got to tell you, it's I feel like a part of me is I yearn for some college DFS when it's not here. So yeah, I'm very excited as well. At DraftKings quarterback guy I just mentioned, C.J. Beathard, comes in at $6,500. He replaced Jake Rudock, or I should say, unseated Jake Rudolph prematurely and led to his graduate transfer to Michigan. He's added 29 pounds of muscle, which was very, very much needed after if you saw him play last year. I mean, he was rail thin. He posted a 104, 105 QBR under pressure last year, and a 52% completion percentage, which is very impressive for a true freshman. I can't recall if he's a redshirt freshman. Like I said, I'm very, very tired right now. But he's added. He had a 120.3 QBR in the face of the blitz, which was also very impressive for a freshman. As far as on his deep targets of 20 plus, he averaged 34.6 yards per completion and had a 5-0 touchdown to interception ratio on those deep throws. As far as my FanDuel pick, I like Wes Lunt of Illinois. He's playing in another spread offense. He comes in at only $6,900, which is pretty low for the numbers that he's capable of producing. Of course, he doesn't have the services of Mike Dudek just yet, but hoping he gets him back pretty soon. He's a guy that loves to use the play action. His QBR jumped to 130.7 with play action and had a 4-0 touchdown to interception ratio. On throws over 20 yards, he completed 47.1%. He averaged 35.2 yards per completion on those deep throws and posted a 5-1 touchdown to interception ratio on 20 plus targets. This is a guy that honestly would be better suited to a pro style offense. He has those traits that are looked for in that type of offense, but of course he plays in the Illinois spread, so he has to make do. Those traits include he's always keeping his eyes downfield, always looking vertically. He he produced 57.6 yards in the air percentage last season, basically meaning that more than half of his passing yards came on his throws, not on the run or the wide receivers running after the catch. He's got a lightning quick release. He usually gets rid of it in about 2.5 seconds, and he's got very good pocket presence. I mentioned his ratios, but yeah, he had a 19.4% increase in QBR after 2.6 seconds, just showing how comfortable he was, even sitting in the pocket. So I really like him this week.
Yeah, I like both of those calls, especially the DraftKings call. For me at DraftKings, I'm going with Matt Johnson from Bowling Green State. He's 8,700. He's been the slate's most productive quarterback for the season up to this point, but he's priced as only the 7th most expensive quarterback. Right now, he leads the FBS with 915 passing yards. He also has 8 touchdowns to only 1 interception. Bowling Green is playing at home against a Memphis team that has been stingy on defense, but as you mentioned earlier, I think that's maybe more the result of matchups that they face as opposed to some inherent strength of the team. Bowling Green is a 3-point underdog at home, but they're projected to have around 38 points in a high-scoring affair, a lot of back-and-forth scoring we should see in that game. Johnson will throw the ball a lot. I think he will have to throw the ball a lot. I think 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think those are feasible numbers for him. And then at FanDuel, FanDuel at quarterback, I'm going with Jeff Locke, $6,800. And this is more based on the matchup as opposed to the player himself, because we really haven't seen what Locke is capable of doing, especially this year and really even last year when he was the backup to Marcus Mariota. But, Adams, even though he hasn't played at a Marcus Mariota level, he has been actually fairly competent. And I think that Locke has the potential to approximate what it is that Adams has done in his 2 matchups this year. But again, this is really about this matchup. I think Locke has a high ceiling and a high floor as a dual threat player. Oregon is a 44.5-point favorite at home, projected to score over 58 points against Georgia State from the Sun Belt. That projected point total is the highest in their slate. So I think there is a lot of room for upside at Jeff Locke's salary. Even if Adams does start the game, I think it's almost certain that he won't play a majority of the game because of the broken finger. And there's also the big possibility that he just doesn't even play this game because he's really not necessary for Oregon to roll in this game. Let's go to the running backs. Wes, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I love those picks, Matt. Matt Johnson, just a no-brainer. If you can fit him in, you got to get him in your lineup. I don't care who he's playing. There's a few teams I may not play him against. At running back, I'm gonna stick in Illinois, and I really like Josh Ferguson. He posted a nearly even 46.7 elusive rating, basically meaning that he was much better than average in avoiding tackles, and he produced a 49.3 breakaway percentage, basically meaning that half of his rushing total came via 15 plus yard runs, where he had 12 last year. The really reason that I like him so much is within DraftKings PPR, full PPR format. He averaged a wide receiver like 2.08 yards per route run on 205 routes. Now, there are a few running backs out there that produced even better yards per route run. But on 205 routes, he saw 60 receiving targets, caught 50 of them, and produced 427 receiving yards. I see him having a big day. And another guy that I previously looked at the team was LSU's Leonard Fournette. Comes in at $8,400, which is not usually the price I'll mention on this show, but I'll pay for him, man. I'm telling you what he did last week against Mississippi State. He broke 4 runs of 15 plus yards that generated 81 of his 159 yards. Auburn actually has not looked good on defense. They permitted Louisville's rushing attack to put up 238 yards with a 5.0 rushing attempt average and 3 TDs. And then they turned around and played Jacksonville State, and allowed 161 yards and a touchdown there. I see Leonard Fournette just shredding the Auburn defense, and I think LSU is going to pull out of that game with the victory. Of course, playing at home doesn't hurt.
Okay, and so for me, I'm going at DraftKings. I'm going with Devion Smith at Michigan, 7,400. Smith has been Michigan's workhorse back so far. He has 40 carries on the season, 3 receptions, but this is really about the matchup. Michigan is a 34-point favorite at home, projected to score 41.75 points against Nevada, Las Vegas, which is one of the worst teams in football last year against the run. They've also been really bad this year against the run. I think that 100 yards and a touchdown is reasonable. He has multi-touchdown upside. And then at DraftKings, again, running back, I'm going with Elijah Hood, North Carolina, 5,400. I'm going cheap at running back. Hood is the lead back for a UNC team, favored to win at home by 9.5 points against Illinois, projected to score 36.5 points. In week 1, Hood had 12 carries. In week 2, he had 16 carries. He's a guy who is getting the ball kind of whether they are up or down in the game flow. I think as long as UNC does not trail by a large margin in this game, Hood should have a lot of opportunity to accumulate yards and get touchdowns. He's 6 feet, 220 pounds. I'm a big guy. He's the only UNC running back to score a touchdown so far this season. I think that will probably continue in this game. At FanDuel, I'm going with DeAndre Furby from Western Kentucky, 6,000. Leon Allen and Anthony Wells, last season starter and backup, they're both out for this game. Furby's the starter. He should get tons of action. He's massive, 6'1", 240 pounds. After Allen injured his knee in week 2, Furby entered the game. He wasn't highly efficient, but he did have 14 carries. He got a touchdown, and I think most importantly, he had 3 receptions. Western Kentucky is a team that really likes to get the ball to its running backs, and I think he's probably good enough as a receiver out of the backfield to where they can use him in a similar manner to how they would have used Leon Allen. Not that he's going to be nearly as good as Allen, but he can function in a similar manner. Western Kentucky is a point and a half underdog to Indiana on the road, but they're still projected to score 34 points. I think the game should be close enough, long enough for Furby to see lots of touches and high scoring enough for him to get some of those touches near the goal line. He's the only active running back on the team who has scored a touchdown or carried the ball more than twice this season. So I think he's going to get a lot of run. And then finally on FanDuel, I'm also going with Patrick Scoff from Georgia Tech, 5,200. He's a holdover from last week in 2 blowout victories. He's rushed for 122 yards. He scored 4 touchdowns on a team leading 23 carries. He's lost some touches to backups in the previous 2 games because they haven't really needed him to carry the full load. I think this week it might be a little bit of a different story. Georgia Tech is projected to score 28, close to 29 points against Notre Dame in a tight contest. They are 2.5-point favorites on the road. I think Scov, once again, is likely to see double-digit carries and a couple of goal line opportunities. He's a huge guy. I think he will convert in some of those touches into touchdowns. I think his upside is 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I think his floor is about 40 yards and 1 touchdown. Wes, let's go to the wide receivers. Who do you like there?
Yeah, I just wanted to add 2 quick points. The Vegas odds are going to be in for a rude awakening when they see the final score of the Illinois-North Carolina game. That will be a lot closer than what they're predicting. And man, if you saw the injury to Leon Allen of Western Kentucky, I'm sure you don't want to see it again. But let me just say, don't go watch it if you haven't. It was one of the worst injuries I've ever seen in my life. That was just absolutely disgusting. At wide receiver, I'm really excited to see what Demarcus Robinson's going to do. I've got a man crush on Greer for Florida. Will Greer is I've been touting him all off season, and Demarcus Robinson is his number 1 wideout. I think this is the week that Will Greer has the training wheels taken off, and he's allowed to produce a full game of action. And last season against UK, Demarcus Robinson, he only put up 15 catches for 216 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, it's just ridiculous numbers. It's something that will likely continue in this matchup in Lexington. Last Saturday against East Carolina, Robinson led the team in receptions, and he also caught his first touchdown of the season. I think it's an indicator of big things, and I see a big game for him. Another guy that I'm excited about is Duke's John L. Barnes. He comes in at $5,000, which is a really nice price, especially for FanDuel. He posted 11 catches for 109 yards and a touchdown in Week 1 against Tulane. He's really emerged with an established connection with Thomas Sirk, their new quarterback, and I think he's going to be a name to know this year. Of course, he pretty much came out of obscurity, considering we didn't know what was going to transpire from the Blue Devils receiving core. Even last week against North Carolina A&T, when all the starters, well, Sirk played quite a bit, but the receivers didn't get a whole lot of throws. John L. had a 44-yard catch, 2 catches, 56 yards. Just shows you that he's a huge part of the offense, even playing in the soft matchups.
All right, at DraftKings, I'm going with wide receiver Josh Reynolds from Texas A&M at 5,400. I'm going cheap, but this was a guy last year who led a high-scoring offense in receiving yards and touchdowns. Last year, he had 1 touchdown per game. This year, A&M has handily won its first 2 contests by a minimum of 21 points each. Reynolds hasn't really been needed to contribute in those games. And he has only 5 receptions on the season, 81 yards and 1 touchdown. In part, that is why he is so cheap. Also, he's cheaper than freshman wide receiver Christian Kirk on DraftKings. Kirk has outproduced him so far. He's a 5-star recruit who looks impressive, but I don't know if I'm buying him just yet as the number 1 wide receiver in a 2-game sample size. I could definitely see in a high-scoring matchup, A&M is a 34-point favorite at home, projected to score 49.25 points against Nevada. I could see how Reynolds reasserts himself as the number 1 wide receiver on that team, especially as this could kind of be thought of as the sort of like tune-up game for SEC conference play, which will be starting next week for A&M. So I definitely think that the Aggies will want to get their lead receiver in a productive rhythm. And I think, again, plenty of points to go around in this contest. And in general, if a team is scoring lots of touchdowns, at some point, the lead receiver, a guy who has scored 14 touchdowns in the last 15 games, that guy at some point will be likely to get his touchdowns and his touches. At FanDuel, I'm going with Kevin Lucas from Tulsa, $6,800. Last year, Lucas was one of the best wide receivers in college football, over 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns in 12 games. And he did that on a 2-10 team that was subpar on offense, catastrophic on defense, and on average outscored by more than 2 touchdowns per contest. This year, Tulsa has been much better on offense, but they are still a 30.5-point underdog to Oklahoma on the road. They're projected to score only 20.5 points. But that really just kind of mirrors what happened last season for an entire season, and Lucas was very productive under similar circumstances. I think he should be fine in this game. Tulsa will have to throw the ball a lot, and Lucas could easily turn one of those mini targets into a touchdown. All right, let's go to the tight ends at FanDuel. Wes, who are you looking at there?
All right, I mentioned him earlier. Nebraska's Sethan Carter. On FanDuel, he comes in at $3,200. Of course, he has nigh a catch or any other statistic for that matter. He's been suspended the last 2 games. When I look at the tight end position, I look for 3 things before I look into the numbers. I look to see if their head coach has any NFL coaching experience. Then I look at their offensive coordinator and see if their offensive coordinator has NFL coaching experience. And then I'm looking mainly for a pro-style offense. These are the 3 factors that equate to a big season for tight ends in college football. Tight ends are the usage is going through the roof in the NFL. And those coaches that are coming out of the NFL are changing the game of football by using that position a lot more frequently. Mike Riley, he's got a history of using tight ends back when he was at Oregon State. Connor Hamlet last year was great. He had a couple smaller name tight ends that actually had some decent games. Sethan Carter is going to be a big guy for Nebraska. He's lucky enough to play within the pro style offense under Mike Riley, who has NFL head coaching experience, and offensive coordinator Danny Langsdorf does as well. And he's going to be a guy that you're going to need to consider for your FanDuel lineups at tight end for the remainder of the season.
For me, I'm going with Tyler Higbee at Western Kentucky, $3,700. I'm paying up for tight end here, but I'm doing that because there are a lot of opportunities in that slate to save money, so I think you can afford to do it. And I know this is a chalky play, like not even the rain could wash the chalk from the sidewalk off of this, but with tight end, you're basically hoping for 60 yards or a touchdown. I think Higbee has the great potential to hit those numbers. Western Kentucky's projected, again, to score 34 points in a close contest against Indiana. And in weeks 1 and 2, he had stat lines of 4 receptions for 102 yards and 1 touchdown, and then 7 receptions for 88 yards. He's Western Kentucky's leading receiver at this point in the season. He will be on the field for the entire contest. He's a big guy, 6'6", 250, and he has a chance of getting the ball not only just all over the field, but especially in the red zone. So on one of the rare chances that I am paying up for tight end, he's the guy that I'm going to do it for. All right, let's go to DraftKings, and let's look at the flex plays there. Wes, who do you have?
All right, and this is a guy that shouldn't be a surprise. I really like Kenny Lawler this week for California. Comes in at a ridiculous $5,900. He's 6'3", 195 pounds with at least last reported 4.54 speed. I believe it's better than that, but still at 6'3", that is really good. Last season he secured 54, 57 catchable targets, produced a 2.04 yards per route run, which incidentally was exactly what Josh Ferguson, the running back for Illinois, produced. The thing about him from last year that's really important is he led the team, and it was actually one of the nation's leading receivers with a 128.7 wide receiver rating. Basically, that is a measure of the quarterback rating when throwing to that receiver. That's a ridiculous number that will continue to have Jared Goff, which has one of the best arm, if not the best arms in college football, throwing him the ball. The trust and the compatibility is very obvious. Actually, last week, Lawler failed to score a touchdown for the first time in 3 starts dating back to last season against San Diego State. But he did catch 6 passes in week 1 for 3 touchdowns. I see him having a great game against Texas, although Texas' passing defense has been very strong the past few years. They're not looking that good this year. I'm looking to exploit the Texas defense until further notice. And one of the things I think Lawler's going to do, he's going to stretch the field. Last season, he caught all 8 of his catchable 20-plus yard targets for 3 touchdowns, and he saw actually 20% of his targets came beyond 20 yards. Kenny Lawler's a guy to definitely consider this week at only $5,900 at DraftKings.
All right, my flex for DraftKings is Terrell Newby from Nebraska, $6,600. He was my flex last week, and that really paid off. But this is not just recency bias. He's the clear workhorse on a Nebraska team that's playing on the road against Miami as a 3.5-point underdog. I think Nebraska will attempt to slow the game down a little bit by feeding Newby. Nebraska is still projected to score 27.25 points. So far, Newby has scored 40% of his team's offensive touchdowns. If they get near the goal line, he should get the opportunity to score. Last year, Miami gave up 137.5 yards and 1.6 touchdowns per game I think Newbie has a good chance of getting around 90 scrimmage yards and scoring a touchdown, and I think there's even a little room for upside there. Okay, it is time for Wes's winners. Wes, give me the two guys you think could be big for GPPs, one on DraftKings and one on FanDuel.
Okay, over on DraftKings, now I'm going deep here to give you some salary flexibility. Virginia Tech running back Trayvon McMillan, he comes in at only $3,000. The running backs at Virginia Tech, it's not guaranteed that McMillan will get a significant number of touches, but with the way Trey Edmonds and J.C. Coleman have been playing the first 2 weeks, I wouldn't be surprised if he eventually emerged, at least until Marshawn Williams comes back from injury. And then over on FanDuel, I'll go with Joe Hansley of Colorado State. That's assuming that Rashad Higgins doesn't play. If he doesn't play, then they're going to need to put some yards together, and Joe Hansley will be the number one guy. It comes in at only $5,000 on FanDuel, which is low for that format, and I like him a lot. I also like Florida running back Jordan Cronkite as well against Kentucky.
All right, and then finally, we teased it at the beginning of the show. Give me the two plays of the week for you at Fantasy Feud.
All right, on Fantasy Feud, just real quick, I really like Mississippi State. Brandon Holloway, you can't get this matchup on FanDuel or DraftKings. They're going up against Northwestern State. I actually just graded the Northwestern State game against Louisiana Lafayette, and what's the start? The running back for Louisiana Lafayette. It eludes me right now, but he put up 5 touchdowns. There was actually one run where he ran 88 yards without even being touched. I see Brandon Holloway easily producing enough numbers to justify his $40,000 salary. And then I also like Tyler Boyd, who since the suspension, he still hasn't, his salary hasn't normalized. It's just $95,400. And I think he's going to have a good game against Iowa.
All right, great stuff. And I think the name you're looking for was Elijah McGuire.
Exactly. Yes. Like I said, no sleep for 2 days, but I'll be
lots
back
of Red Bull.
That's right.
All right, Wes, great stuff. I think that's going to do it for this edition of the College Daily Slant. Be sure to tune in next week for our DraftKings and FanDuel Week 4 plays. Of course, you can catch us on PFF Radio. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes, listen to the show on Stitcher and Blog Talk Radio, and watch the show on YouTube and the Fantasy Sports Network. For Wes Huber on Twitter at PFF_Wes, I'm Matt Friedman, Matt F. the Oracle. Thanks for tuning in.